Consistency is not glamorous, it does not announce itself, it does not trend, and it does not give immediate rewards, yet it is the silent force behind every leader who lasts. Leadership is not built in moments of inspiration, but in the uncelebrated repetition of effort, when nothing seems to change. Leaders understand that power is not created by intensity once in a while, but by discipline practiced every single day, especially on the days when motivation is dead and belief feels fragile. They wake up and execute regardless of emotion. Because they know emotions are unreliable but habits are loyal, consistency becomes their identity long before it becomes their success. While others search for shortcuts, leaders commit to the long road, knowing that progress compounds quietly and strength accumulates invisibly. They show up when it hurts, when results are delayed, when recognition is absent, and when quitting would be easier than continuing. This is where leadership separates itself from talent, because talent without consistency collapses under pressure. But consistency forges leaders who can carry weight for years without breaking. Leaders treat consistency as a promise they refuse to break with themselves. They do not wait for perfect conditions, because they understand that perfect conditions never arrive. They work in chaos, they build in uncertainty, and they move forward while doubt whispers that effort is wasted. Consistency teaches leaders patience, and patience strengthens endurance. They stop measuring progress by immediate outcomes and start measuring it by effort given. One disciplined action stacked on another disciplined action becomes momentum, and momentum becomes mastery. Leaders know that greatness is not a breakthrough, it is a build-up. Every early morning, every late night, every repeated failure followed by the same decision to continue adds another layer to their foundation. They accept boredom as part of growth because they understand that boring work done consistently beats exciting work done occasionally. This mindset protects them from distraction, from comparison, and from the false urgency of quick wins. Pain becomes familiar to leaders who embrace consistency. They learn to operate through discomfort, not around it. Their muscles ache, their minds resist, and their confidence is tested, yet they continue because consistency trains them to act without negotiating with weakness. Leadership demands reliability, and reliability is born from consistency. People trust leaders who show up every day, not those who appear only when success is guaranteed. Leaders understand that consistency builds credibility long before it builds results. When others doubt them, they remain steady. When progress slows, they remain disciplined. When failure strikes, they remain committed. This steadiness becomes their strength over time. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once required effort becomes automatic. And what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Consistency sharpens self-belief in a way motivation never can. Leaders do not believe in themselves because they feel confident. They feel confident because they have proven to themselves repeatedly that they do not quit. Every day they show up despite resistance becomes evidence that they can be trusted with greater responsibility. Self-belief grows from kept promises, not positive thinking. Leaders trust themselves because they have endured days when nothing worked and still continued. They have walked through doubt, fatigue, criticism, and silence without abandoning the process. This internal trust becomes unshakable because it is built on action, not hope. Consistency removes fear over time because fear cannot survive repeated exposure. What once intimidated becomes routine, and what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Leaders also understand that consistency protects them from emotional extremes. Success does not inflate them, and failure does not destroy them. because their focus remains on process rather than outcome. They do not overreact to wins or collapse under losses. They return to the same habits, the same standards, and the same discipline regardless of circumstances. This emotional control gives them longevity. Leadership is not about explosive moments of brilliance, it is about sustained performance under pressure. Consistency trains leaders to remain calm when others panic and focused when others lose direction. It anchors them when chaos threatens stability. Over time, people begin to rely on them, not because they are loud, but because they are dependable. Consistency demands sacrifice, and leaders accept this without resentment. They sacrifice comfort, convenience, and instant gratification in exchange for long-term power. They understand that every skipped effort weakens the chain, and every repeated action strengthens it. They do not romanticize the struggle, but they respect it. They know that discipline is heavier than regret, but regret lasts longer. So they choose the weight of consistency every day. This choice shapes their character, sharpens their vision, and strengthens their leadership. While others wait for confidence, leaders build it. While others wait for clarity, leaders create it through action. While others wait for change, leaders become the change through consistency. This is the power of consistency in leadership. It is quiet, unforgiving, and unstoppable. It does not rush, but it never stops. Leaders who commit to consistency outlast talent, outgrow competition, and overcome failure. They do not rely on luck. They rely on discipline. They do not chase motivation. They build habits. They do not need constant validation because their strength comes from within. Consistency turns ordinary effort into extraordinary impact, and ordinary people into leaders capable of carrying vision through storms. This is how leadership is built, one disciplined decision at a time, repeated until strength becomes permanent. Consistency forces leaders to confront themselves every single day, and that confrontation is never easy because it removes all excuses. There is no hiding behind talent, no blaming circumstances, no waiting for motivation to arrive. Leaders wake up knowing that the work will demand them regardless of how they feel, and they accept that demand without resistance. This acceptance hardens them. It teaches them that leadership is not about feeling ready, it is about being reliable. When the body is tired and the mind is heavy, consistency becomes an act of defiance against weakness. Leaders do not ask if they should continue, they ask how they will continue. They understand that progress does not respond to emotions, it responds to effort applied repeatedly over time. Every disciplined action becomes a brick, and every brick laid without applause builds a structure strong enough to withstand pressure. Leaders learn that skipping a day is never just skipping a day. It is training the mind to quit, and they refuse to train themselves in surrender. Consistency reshapes how leaders experience struggle. Pain no longer feels like a warning sign. It feels like confirmation that growth is happening. Leaders stop fearing the discomfort because they have learned that discomfort is temporary, but weakness is permanent. They push through resistance, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they respect what suffering produces. Over time, their tolerance for difficulty expands. What once exhausted them becomes manageable. What once intimidated them becomes routine. This expansion is not dramatic, it is gradual, built through thousands of small decisions to keep going when stopping would have been easier. Leaders understand that strength is not revealed in moments of ease, but developed through repeated exposure to challenge. Consistency makes hardship familiar, and familiarity removes fear. Through consistency, leaders develop patience that most people never master. They stop demanding immediate results and start trusting long-term effort. They understand that meaningful outcomes operate on delayed timelines, and they adjust their expectations accordingly. This patience protects them from frustration and impulsive decisions. While others quit because progress feels slow, leaders continue because they know momentum builds invisibly before it becomes visible. They do not chase validation, they chase alignment with their standards. Their confidence is rooted in knowing they did the work, regardless of whether results showed up that day. This mindset allows them to stay grounded when others panic and focused when others become distracted by short-term noise. Consistency also strips leadership down to its core truth, which is responsibility. Leaders take ownership of their actions every day, not just on successful days. They understand that consistency exposes character because it reveals what someone does when no one is watching. Leaders behave the same in private as they do in public, because their discipline is internal, not performative. This integrity builds trust, first within themselves and eventually with others. People follow leaders who are predictable in effort, dependable in action, and unwavering in standards. Consistency becomes the foundation of influence, because influence is earned through reliability, not words. Leaders also learn through consistency how to manage doubt. Doubt does not disappear, but it loses power. Leaders stop arguing with doubt and simply outwork it. They understand that action weakens doubt faster than reassurance ever could. Every day they show up despite uncertainty becomes proof that doubt does not control them. Over time, doubt transforms from an obstacle into background noise. Leaders become comfortable moving forward without clarity, trusting that clarity will be earned through continued effort. This ability to act without certainty is one of the most powerful leadership traits, and it is forged entirely through consistency. Consistency forces leaders to accept a difficult truth that success is not dramatic, it is repetitive. There is no single moment where everything changes. There is only a long stretch of disciplined work that eventually shifts outcomes. Leaders embrace this reality and stop searching for shortcuts. They commit to the process fully, knowing that consistency is the only force strong enough to turn vision into reality. They understand that motivation fades, circumstances change, and emotions fluctuate, but consistency remains if it is chosen deliberately. This choice becomes their edge. While others depend on feeling inspired, leaders depend on their habits. And habits, once established, carry leaders forward even on the darkest days. Consistency is not loud, but it is dominant. It does not rush, but it always arrives. Leaders who commit to it become unstoppable, not because they are extraordinary, but because they are unbreakable. They stay when others leave. They work when others wait. They grow when others complain. This is the discipline that builds leaders capable of carrying vision through adversity and pressure. Consistency is the quiet power behind every enduring leader, and those who master it never need to announce their strength because their results speak with undeniable force. Consistency reshapes a leader's relationship with time, because leaders who commit to disciplined repetition stop rushing the process and start respecting it. They understand that time rewards those who show up daily, not those who demand instant outcomes. Every day of consistent effort deposits strength into the future, even when the present shows no sign of change. Leaders learn to operate without visible progress, trusting that unseen growth is still happening beneath the surface. This ability separates them from the impatient majority who abandon the path just before momentum takes hold. Consistency teaches leaders to endure long stretches of uncertainty without losing direction. They continue to prepare even when opportunity has not yet arrived, knowing preparation always precedes power. This patience is not passive, it is active discipline repeated relentlessly. Leaders do not wait for results to validate their effort. They let effort validate itself through repetition. Over time, this creates a deep internal stability that cannot be shaken by setbacks or delays. Consistency also forces leaders to confront isolation because disciplined paths are often lonely. When others choose comfort, leaders choose commitment. When others seek approval, leaders seek progress. This separation is painful, but leaders accept it because they understand that growth demands distance from distractions. They stop explaining themselves to people who do not share their standards. They stop seeking permission to pursue excellence. Consistency teaches them to become self-sufficient in motivation, grounded in routine rather than external encouragement. This internal independence becomes a defining leadership trait. Leaders no longer rely on praise to continue or criticism to stop. They move forward because their values demand it. This kind of consistency builds emotional resilience, allowing leaders to stay steady even when misunderstood or unsupported. Through consistency, leaders also master the ability to recover quickly from failure. They do not spiral emotionally because their routine remains intact. Even when outcomes collapse, their habits remain strong. They return to the same disciplined actions the next day, refusing to let disappointment disrupt their rhythm. This stability gives them a massive advantage over those who depend on emotional highs to perform. Leaders understand that recovery speed determines long-term success more than raw talent. Consistency shortens recovery time because it removes decision-making. Leaders do not debate whether to continue, they simply do. This automatic return to discipline prevents setbacks from becoming endings. Failure becomes a temporary interruption, not a defining moment. Consistency sharpens a leader's focus by eliminating unnecessary choices. Leaders simplify their lives so that energy is reserved for what truly matters. They build routines that reduce friction and protect momentum. By removing chaos, they increase clarity. This clarity allows them to make better decisions under pressure. Leaders who are consistent are not easily distracted by noise, trends, or comparison. They remain anchored to their process even when others chase novelty. This discipline creates depth instead of surface level movement. Over time, depth becomes dominance. Leaders who stay consistent outgrow those who constantly restart. They accumulate skill, wisdom, and confidence through sustained effort applied in the same direction. Consistency also builds moral authority. Leaders who live by their standards earn respect without demanding it. Their actions align with their words, and their behavior remains steady regardless of circumstance. This alignment creates trust. People follow leaders they can rely on, not those who fluctuate with mood or pressure. Consistency makes leadership predictable in the best way. Others know what to expect, and that expectation becomes a source of security. Leaders understand that influence is built through repeated demonstration of reliability. They lead by example, not once, but every day. This daily leadership compounds into long-term impact that cannot be replicated through speeches or promises alone. As consistency continues to shape them, leaders begin to see the world differently. They stop asking what is easy and start asking what is necessary. They stop seeking comfort and start pursuing capability. They stop reacting and start executing. This shift transforms their identity. They are no longer people who try, they are people who do. Consistency removes hesitation and replaces it with certainty rooted in action. Leaders gain confidence not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because effort is. This certainty allows them to stand firm in uncertainty and move forward when others freeze. Consistency is ultimately the discipline of honoring commitments long after excitement fades. Leaders understand that the future belongs to those who can endure repetition without losing purpose. They respect the grind because they know it is shaping them into someone capable of carrying responsibility, pressure, and vision. Consistency does not make leaders famous overnight, but it makes them formidable over time. It builds quiet confidence, unbreakable habits, and resilient character. This is the power that sustains leadership beyond talent, beyond circumstance, and beyond failure. Leaders who master consistency do not just succeed, they endure. Consistency forces leaders to confront the reality that discipline must exist even when progress feels invisible. Because leadership is built long before results appear. Leaders understand that effort compounds quietly, that the days which feel insignificant are often the most important, and that quitting usually happens just before growth reveals itself. They stay committed during the slow seasons, during the phases where energy is low and outcomes are delayed, because they trust the process more than their emotions. Consistency trains leaders to detach from immediate reward and attach themselves to long-term vision. They continue to work even when no one notices, because they are not driven by recognition. They are driven by responsibility. This responsibility becomes heavier with time, but leaders grow stronger to carry it. They understand that leadership is not about being impressive for a moment, but dependable for a lifetime. Every repeated action reinforces identity, and identity shapes destiny. Leaders become disciplined not because they force themselves once, but because they reinforce discipline daily until it becomes who they are. Consistency also teaches leaders how to manage exhaustion without surrender. They learn the difference between rest and quitting, between recovery and avoidance. Leaders respect their limits, but never allow limits to define them. They rest with intention and return with commitment. They do not disappear when energy drops. They adjust and continue. This balance prevents burnout while preserving momentum. Leaders understand that consistency does not mean recklessness, it means sustainability. They pace themselves for the long journey, knowing leadership is not a sprint but an endurance test. This endurance gives them an advantage over those who burn brightly and fade quickly. Leaders remain present, prepared, and persistent long after others have lost direction. Consistency sharpens resilience because it exposes leaders to repeated resistance. Each obstacle faced and overcome strengthens mental toughness. Leaders stop being surprised by difficulty because they expect it. They build psychological armor through repetition, training themselves to respond to pressure with composure. This composure allows them to make rational decisions in chaotic environments. Leaders do not panic when plans fail, they adapt and continue. Consistency creates confidence rooted in capability rather than circumstance. Leaders know they can handle adversity because they have handled it before. This confidence becomes contagious, inspiring trust and stability in those who follow them. Through consistency, leaders also develop clarity of purpose. When actions align daily with values, confusion fades. Leaders no longer question why they are doing the work, because the work itself reinforces meaning. Every disciplined choice strengthens alignment between intention and action. This alignment eliminates internal conflict, freeing mental energy for execution. Leaders who are consistent do not waste time second-guessing themselves. They move forward decisively, knowing their direction has been earned through repeated commitment. This clarity becomes a source of power, enabling leaders to navigate complexity without losing focus. Consistency builds courage gradually, not through dramatic acts, but through repeated proof of endurance. Leaders become brave because they have survived difficulty many times before. Fear loses its grip when confronted repeatedly. Leaders stop waiting to feel ready and start acting despite uncertainty. This courage allows them to take calculated risks and pursue ambitious goals. They understand that confidence follows action, not the other way around. Consistency creates a foundation strong enough to support bold vision. Leaders dare to aim higher because they trust their ability to persist. Over time, consistency transforms leadership from effort into instinct. What once required conscious discipline becomes automatic. Leaders no longer struggle to show up. Showing up becomes natural. This automation frees mental capacity for creativity, strategy, and innovation. Leaders who reach this stage operate with calm authority. They are not rushed, not reactive, and not easily shaken. Their presence alone signals stability. Others sense reliability in them, not because they speak loudly, but because they have proven themselves through sustained action. This quiet authority is the result of years of consistency applied without compromise. Consistency ultimately teaches leaders the most difficult lesson of all, that greatness is earned slowly and defended daily. Leaders accept this truth and commit themselves to it fully. They understand that leadership is not granted, it is maintained. Every day demands recommitment. Every day tests discipline. Every day offers the choice to stay or to quit. Leaders choose to stay. This repeated choice defines them. Consistency becomes the force that carries them forward when everything else fails. It is not exciting, but it is unstoppable. And leaders who master it do not just lead in moments, they lead across time. Consistency reveals the true weight of leadership by demanding commitment when conviction is tested the hardest. Leaders discover that the real challenge is not starting strong, but continuing when enthusiasm fades and resistance multiplies. This is where discipline becomes non-negotiable. Leaders stop negotiating with comfort and start honoring commitments made in silence. They understand that every time they follow through despite resistance, they reinforce self-trust. This self-trust becomes the backbone of leadership because leaders who trust themselves do not crumble under pressure. They do not abandon standards when circumstances tighten. They hold the line when it would be easier to bend. Consistency becomes an internal contract, a promise renewed daily through action. Leaders learn that breaking this contract, even once, weakens resolve, while honoring it strengthens identity. Over time, their sense of self becomes inseparable from discipline. They are no longer people who try to be consistent, they are consistent by nature. Consistency also teaches leaders how to carry pressure without transferring it. As responsibility grows, stress intensifies, but leaders trained by repetition remain composed. They absorb difficulty without spreading chaos. They respond rather than react. This emotional control is not accidental, it is practiced daily through disciplined behavior. Leaders become anchors in uncertainty because they are grounded in routine. Their calmness is not ignorance of risk, it is confidence built through repeated exposure to challenge. Consistency gives leaders the capacity to think clearly while others panic. This clarity allows them to make decisions that protect long-term vision rather than short-term relief. Through consistency, leaders learn to separate identity from outcomes. Wins do not inflate them, and losses do not define them. Their self-worth is anchored in effort, not results. This detachment gives them extraordinary stability. Leaders continue to execute with the same intensity regardless of success or failure. They do not chase highs or fear lows. They remain steady, disciplined, and focused. This steadiness compounds over time, creating leaders who are reliable under any condition. People trust leaders who remain consistent when outcomes fluctuate, because predictability in effort creates security in leadership. Consistency also deepens a leader's sense of purpose by eliminating distraction. Leaders stop reacting to every opportunity and start committing to the right ones. They understand that focus is sustained through discipline, not excitement. By repeatedly choosing depth over breadth, leaders develop mastery. Mastery builds confidence, and confidence fuels influence. Leaders who are consistent become highly effective because they concentrate energy instead of scattering it. This concentration allows them to move mountains slowly but surely. While others exhaust themselves chasing novelty, leaders progress steadily by honoring their process. Consistency sharpens accountability. Leaders no longer wait for external pressure to perform. They hold themselves to higher standards internally. They measure success by whether they did the work they promised themselves they would do. This internal accountability is more powerful than any external system because it operates continuously. Leaders correct themselves quickly, adjust without ego, and return to discipline without drama. They do not dwell on mistakes, they learn and move forward. Consistency transforms accountability from a burden into a habit. Leaders take responsibility instinctively, without defensiveness or delay. As consistency matures, leaders gain quiet confidence that does not seek validation. They stop proving themselves and start producing results. Their actions speak consistently, eliminating the need for explanation. This confidence is grounded, not arrogant. Leaders know what they are capable of because they have tested themselves daily. They trust their preparation because it has been earned through repetition. This trust allows them to step into greater responsibility without hesitation. Leaders become comfortable being uncomfortable because consistency has taught them that growth lives there. Consistency ultimately separates leaders from followers by shaping how they respond to difficulty. Leaders do not look for escape when things become hard. They look for execution. They stay present, engaged, and disciplined even when progress feels slow. This persistence creates inevitability. Results may take time, but they arrive because effort never stops. Leaders who commit to consistency become forces of nature, moving steadily forward regardless of resistance. They do not rely on motivation, talent, or luck. They rely on discipline practiced daily. This reliance makes them unstoppable because consistency, once mastered, does not fail.